Imagine an apartment where every square inch is rigged for surveillance. Pan-tilt-zoom cameras are bolted to the walls, microphones are clipped to collars, and Holter monitors are strapped to chests to track heart rates and blood flow. This is the Love Lab at the University of Washington. For 16 years, couples volunteered to spend the weekend in this highly monitored environment, allowing researchers to record their most private, mundane interactions. From this massive cache of data, Dr. John Gottman isolated a statistical anomaly. By watching a couple interact for just 5 minutes, he could predict whether they would eventually divorce, with an accuracy rate of 91%. Calculating divorce with this degree of mathematical precision indicates that relationship failure follows a strict structural cascade, a process governed by observable behavioral laws. For decades, the established clinical standard for resolving marital conflict has been Rogerian active listening. Therapists train couples to use I statements, paraphrase their partner's complaints, and validate each other's emotions to safely de-escalate tension. But the data shows this methodology fails. In the most rigorous studies, the success rate of active listening maxes out at 35%. A year later, less than half of those couples retain any benefit, dropping the long-term success rate to 18%. The Love Lab observations explain why. Long-term, stable couples who rate highly in marital satisfaction almost never utilize active listening protocols during their disputes. When happily married couples fight, they frequently argue loudly. They breach the rules of validation, jump right in to defend their own points, and show a blatant disregard for traditional conflict resolution techniques. Yet these interactions do not destabilize their relationships. Long-term relational stability is not determined by cognitive conflict resolution techniques. It relies on a deeper, underlying physiological architecture. The decay of a relationship follows a highly predictable chain reaction. It almost always initiates with a specific behavioral trigger, known as a harsh startup. A harsh startup accelerates immediately into a global criticism, attacking a partner's character. This triggers the most lethal phase, contempt. Expressed through sarcasm or eye-rolling, contempt is the behavioral expression of absolute disgust. Contempt's impact is biological. Research links receiving contemptuous behavior to a suppression of white blood cells, compromising the immune system. Faced with this toxicity, the receiver shifts into defensiveness, deflecting blame and forcing a self-amplifying loop of reciprocal attacks. This specific behavioral sequence acts as a catalyst. It takes a localized disagreement over chores or finances and transforms it into a systemic biological threat. When this threat level is reached, the body initiates physiological flooding. This is a literal, autonomic fight-or-flight response to the behavioral cascade. The clinical markers are severe. The heart rate spikes violently above 100 beats per minute, the endocrine system secretes acute doses of adrenaline, and blood pressure surges. Neurologically, the cognitive, problem-solving centers of the brain simply shut down. The amygdala takes complete control, treating the spouse's complaints with the exact same alarm system used to survive a physical predator. The data reveals a distinct evolutionary asymmetry in this response. The male cardiovascular system is statistically more reactive to relational stress, and it takes significantly longer for a man's physiology to return to baseline. This biological reactivity drives the final behavioral phase, stonewalling. When overwhelmed by flooding, a partner will disengage entirely, making no eye contact and offering no feedback. Because of their higher physiological reactivity, 85% of stonewallers are men, utilizing a biological defense mechanism to halt the sensory overload. Once physiological flooding occurs, rational communication is biologically impossible. You cannot actively listen or process empathy when your nervous system is in a state of primal panic, rendering cognitive therapy protocols completely useless. To prevent flooding, emotionally intelligent couples use repair attempts. These are verbal or physical data packets, like a joke, a touch, or a direct apology, used to de-escalate tension and apply the brakes to the cascade. The success of a repair attempt relies on a relationship's sentiment override set point. Positive sentiment override acts as a cognitive filter. A thick, stabilizing buffer allows a repair attempt to pass through and de-escalate conflict. Over time, unresolved contempt depletes this historical buffer. The system slips into negative sentiment override, leaving the core exposed. Now, a textbook-approved repair attempt will hit this zero buffer zone, trigger a systemic alert, and bounce off entirely. This explains why active listening fails. It treats conflict as a surface-level cognitive negotiation, ignoring the overriding physiological set point that actually dictates whether the brain can receive new information. If conflict resolution techniques cannot build positive sentiment override, what specific mechanism actually generates this biological buffer? The answer is a concept researchers call love maps. This is the continuous allocation of cognitive room for a partner's psychological world. A high-resolution love map is constantly maintained, tracking shifting data points, from workplace anxieties to fundamental life dreams. The strength of this network is tested during systemic shocks. For example, the birth of a first child causes a precipitous 67% drop in marital satisfaction for couples who lack updated maps. The remaining 33% survive this transition because their cognitive network continuously updates alongside their partner's shifting identity, absorbing the shock of new routines. Maintaining highly detailed love maps prevents a relationship's baseline from slipping into negative sentiment override when major unavoidable life stressors occur. This high-resolution mapping directly fuels the relationship's fondness and admiration system. Clinically, this system functions as the literal antidote to contempt. To diagnose whether the system is merely dormant or entirely destroyed, researchers ask couples to recount their early history. In one clinical case study, a deeply flooded, hostile couple sat down for an interview on the verge of divorce. An unexpected television interview with Connie Chung about their early courtship forced the couple to bypass their current flooding. Asked about their very first date, they suddenly accessed archived positive data, smiling as they recalled the structural challenges of their early romance. This reflects a broader pattern in Gottman's longitudinal data. When analyzing these oral history interviews, couples who recast their past in a positive light demonstrate a 94% probability of future stability. These archived memories suggest the system is reactivating. Emotional intelligence in a partnership is not about perfectly navigating a dispute with clinical buzzwords. It is about building a robust cognitive architecture during times of peace, creating a biological shield that protects you against the inevitable chaos of conflict.